morning, men. Happy Sunday morning. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to talk about a difficult subject right after I do my normal. There we go. Bring that back up. We're going to look there. We're going to do... Today I'm going to talk a little about deconstructionalism and difficulties of deconstructionalism. And most people have no idea. It's too complex for most people, but we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down simply, and it's going to be easy. So I'll wait for a few minutes for people to come in. I'm enjoying my cup of Jamaican coffee this morning. It had 2 already, and it's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's perfect. I've heard a lot of talk in the on the manosphere and in the well, not amongst the manosphere, but the outside orbiters, the men up groups and everything about deconstructing fatherhood. What I've noticed with deconstructing fatherhood is they'll deconstruct fatherhood and then they reconstruct it in the same way that resembles what they want. And deconstructionalism can be hard because you have to take everything off the table. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about deconstructing fatherhood, or we're going to use fatherhood as a modem to get us where we want to go in our thinking and all that, and all things being good and everything like that. And we're going to ask ourselves a few questions. What are the few questions we have to ask about deconstructing fatherhood? Yeah, making some good coffee. That's fine, dog. Well, you have to take everything off the table. Kierkegaard would say everything must come off the table. And then in this thing in deconstruction, I asked myself whether I'm going to do a methodological reconstructionalism or everything. You take everything out, and that's simple. It's simple. We can deconstruct everything. We take everything off the table on what we know about the subject of fatherhood. So you put back on the table things which are epiphenomenon, antecedents, and things like that. And you put back the important parts, or what Kierkegaard would call the important things in which exist. To make it simple, you put back on the table what should exist. Fatherhood. What is fatherhood? Fatherhood is the relationship between a father that takes on a voluntary fatherhood, and voluntary fatherhood is one of those antecedent things. It's a different word. We can look at deconstruction in text too to help us through these things, so we can start deconstructing and reconstructing, because the process of deconstruction or reductionalism are two different things. Reductionalism and philosophy are two different things. When I'm going to reduce, like, reductionism is easy because we all learned it in school. It's division. It's 4 divided by 8 divided by 4 is 2, but we can do 4 divided by 2 and we get the same. So we reduce the components down to their basic facts. We do this scientifically too. Which often gets confused in the whole realm of deconstruction. We can do this in literature. We can do this in philosophy. You just have to keep the process in mind, where we reduce everything down to the basic facts, but we keep what Camus would call on-the-field events, or the positives and contrapositives, and the positives and the 2 things that exist. We have a father and we have a child. And the way I like to do this is... in my head, the way I have to do this thing is, if you're walking through an empty area and there's a baby laying there, there's just a baby, or there's a child laying there, sitting there, and there's no mother, and the world's vacant and empty, and there's nothing else but you and that child. We've deconstructed it down to the basic elements of what you can do. Now, as things unfold emergently, and things will unfold emergently in realities of life, simply because our mind is in a process right now, there's nothing else but you and that child. And Mgtow's often asked this question, what is fatherhood? And we have to ask ourselves, and there's no mother. Mothers don't exist in these things. And this is the way you should look at things when you look at fatherhood. You have to deconstruct it to see what the components of it, see what the things of it are, and then you start putting it back together. So the first two major facts are that there's you, and you don't have a label. We'll even deconstruct it farther, where we're going to take fatherhood away. I say there's no such thing as fatherhood. And then there's a man and a child. And those are simply labels so we can determine which human being is what. And then that's an important label. So we reconstructed a little bit of the labels to get us a starting point. And that's what methodological reconstruction does. There's things that you have to, words you're going to have to know, new approaches that you're going to have to think about in this thing as a Mgtow once you start doing this. And Mgtows do this. We simply throw out everything in our lives and we say, we're going to start over, we're going to start fresh, we're going to start a new way of thinking in Mgtow, but I have to deconstruct the world that I live in. I have to cut all those threads. Icam Tolle, which Icam or Eckhart Tolle, whatever his name is, it's hard to pronounce in German. It's in German, but he says you cut all the threads which surround, which hold you, which bind you. A binding is the word marriage comes from the term binding of sticks. So we cut all those things. And Eckhart Tolle sat on a park bench for what he says, but I don't know how long, 2 years or something, and existed. And then he started reconstructing the life from the failed life before that. So that's what we do as Mgtows. We start reconstructing, but we have things in here that we have to consider. There's epiphenomenon. There's antecedents in these things. There's emergent phenomenon in these things. A number of the things we want to look at in detail when we start doing this, emergent phenomenon, things that are going to come in later that matter to it. So I started asking myself questions, and I'm going to go to after we go through the slight explanation of what reconstruction is, and I think I do. Deconstruction is easy. You just take everything down to its basic facts. Kierkegaard says take everything off the table. Then we have the idea of there's you in this child and there is no mother. What if there is no mother? And mother doesn't exist in this. There's just you and this child. And I think that's a good place to start on this thing because it gives us a more honest view of what we're talking about. So I asked myself some questions, and what is fatherhood? Fatherhood is simply having a child, and there is you, and the child is without a mother, and you are simply become the responsible party for that child. Okay, that's easy. It's a choice between becoming the responsible party or not becoming the responsible party. You have choice. That's why we talk about, that's why I often talk about men's choice in abortion. Because in reductionism, in this theory, and if everything was true and right in the world, you can develop a sense of either I want to be a father or I don't want to be a father. And I say people that don't want to be fathers make horrible fathers. And you can talk to anybody in the deconstructing dad environment about if he doesn't want to be a father, he's going to make a horrible father. And that's true with mothers too. If he doesn't want to be a mother, she's going to make a horrible mother. Why are you people forcing these people to be things they don't want to be? And then you expect different results. That's crazy. To expect results, the government to expect results out of people that don't want to be mothers and fathers is crazy. They're expecting some magic to happen, since a metaphysical world about these people, these set of people that really don't matter. But today, for today, we're going to talk about fatherhood and not wanting to be a father or wanting to be father. Okay, there's no marriage. There's no fake preconceptions of masculinity on these. You're taking that off the table. You found the child on the street. and there's the child, and it's sitting there, and there's only you and the child. Some would say, yes, I'll keep that child, and it's a decision that would be made in like when you're buying candy at the counter there, and it's response buying. You're just buying it, and you go, oh, there's some toothpicks, and I need that. And there are all them things at the counter where you're standing there waiting for the girl to ring you up. It's impulse buying. So the first impulse someone would be to pick the baby up and say, okay, that's my baby, and not think about the results of picking that baby up. I think a lot of people do this in life, and someone see the advantages. Now, when we do philosophy, we always do the negative and the positive. We always do positive and contrapositives, and we always try to stay on the field of the argument. And that's important, because I see with Deconstructing Dad project, they go off the field and then they reconstruct fatherhood as they want to reconstruct fatherhood. And that's not really the truth. It gives you somebody else's errant decision on what they think fatherhood is. And in these emergent things, everybody's life is different. Everybody's decisions are different. Fairness in the law and everything should be different, but if so, we look at a lot of things, how people are raised. We look at what riches. Now that comes in, riches, wealth comes in. Can I afford this baby? Can I afford this child? And then I start thinking about things like, is the child 5, 6 years old? Is the child a baby? Do I have to go to work? Can I get child care? Is there someone else in my life that can take care of the child while I'm at work? And hence, I'd have to take care of them too, because I'm not a slave driver. I'm not one of these people that believe in slavery. I don't want to be put in slavery. I don't want to be put in the position of taking care of, like fathers often are. Fathers are put in a position of taking care of everything, even after fatherhood is deconstructed by a judge. So we become slaves to that. So I'm not the kind of person that believes in the slavery aspect. Do I have a roommate? Is there someone in my life? Is there a friend? Is there a mother? Is there a father that would, and then they take on the same decision you're taking on. They're taking on the decision to be a caretaker to that child. So we know we reduced the things down. We started adding antecedents, and we started adding epiphenomenon to this. The epiphenomena to these things are cost evaluation, whether I want to have that. And choice is important. Choice is important in these things. Like I said, I don't want things pushed on me, because if I'm told as a slave to do something and I don't want to do that, I'm going to make a horrible slave. I'm going to make a horrible slave. Things aren't going to get done. It's the same thing with fatherhood. It's the same thing with motherhood. It's the same thing with human beings in general. Then I can ask myself a few other things. Are there advantages to this about raising a child? And we have to be honest. What kind of advantages and what kind of disadvantages are there? I often say, from knowledge, I can include pragmaticism in this thing, because from experience, I know from raising children that if I cook for one, I might as well be cooking for three. It doesn't matter how much I cook for. If I'm doing laundry for one, which is me, and I'm doing these things for my lifestyle, to keep my lifestyle and keep my cleanliness and sanity intact, I do it for one. I might as well be doing it for three, because there's no extra work. If I cook, I might as well cook for three. There's no extra work. If I'm doing laundry, the laundry thing's not going to fill up because you have one child. It's the same amount of work. What else is like that? Everything, the water, I pay for 3 cubics of water anyways, blah, blah, blah. They add in all these things. They say it's $250,000, but I find it's not $250,000 to raise a child. It's the same cost that you have, because they do everything you do, except for childcare, if you pay for childcare. But my argument with childcare, once I deconstruct childcare, is what is a person saying when he says he wants to do childcare, outside childcare, or he wants someone to take care of that children? They're saying they don't want to be the parent. So that goes back to the initial thing. Do you want to be a parent? Do you want to be a father? And if you're getting childcare, you're saying, I simply don't want to be, and I know it's a harsh truth. You simply don't want to be a father for that time period while you're at work, or you simply don't want to be a father for that time period where you want childcare. And if you can afford that, it becomes the question: can you do that? Is that okay in your life, or do you have time to do this? Do you have friends enough to do this? What is it? Blah blah blah. If you even want to be a father, all these things come into play. Like I said, all these things. I'm going to go probably at the end of this thing, and I'm going to look at I'm going to look at something from the Smithsonian. What's a Smithsonian? Because I trust the Smithsonian people on this, and I wanted to look at that, and we'll go through it, and we'll ask the questions that they ask. We'll look for the gender biases and what they do after we know. So we have deconstruction, we have reductionism, we take everything off the table. We put only the things that matter on the table, and that does not include a female. You have a child and a person. You have the epiphenomena that goes along with these things. Life is epiphenomena. Life is chaos. Antecedents that go along with these things, epiphenomena, and things that will arrive later. Emergent phenomena do not preclude, how does they say this? Emergent phenomena does not preclude the impact of phenomena. So there's going to be the impact of phenoms in this thing. Whether you do it scientifically, we don't know everything. Whether you do it like Deidre would do it in text, and he would write these things down, and he would deconstruct them and reconstruct them in text, which is a form of science. And like I said, reductionism is a, when people get confused on these things, what is reductionism? What is deconstructionism? What they're confusing is the process that comes after that, which is reconstructionalism and social reconstructionalism, which is called social modernity, social whatever. I can't remember the word off bat right now, but it's social reconstructionalism and how those things work. And we remember the parts of everything that matter, Descartes, and then we're working up in our philosophy class here, and all the parts, you're going to put in all the parts that matter to this, and you're asking what is fatherhood? What is this thing? And then I always go back, and I'll stop where I put this thing. There's no such thing as a word as a father. It's just a label. You have a human that is mature, and you have a child that is immature, and that's it, as your part as a father. And when do we start considering the things in life that are going to impact you? I always said in my life, and it's a very logical statement, I've never made a mistake unless something impacted me. Eckhart Tolle always says this too. I never made a mistake in my life unless some emergent thing or some epiphenomenon impacted what I do. In maintenance, we have this thing: never work behind somebody, never work with somebody lesser than you, and never let people touch what you're working on, because more likely than as soon as different thoughts and different thought patterns and epiphenomena come to the problem which you're trying to solve, a gearbox or an electrical panel, or you lose your thought process to other people, you lose your agency, you lose what, so you never do these things. You're always working on it by yourself, and you're always doing it the way you understand these things. So I've never made a mistake unless some other thing, and there are other things that are environmental things that impact a lot of things when you're doing, like in electric, the environmental things may be heat, vibration, there's heat and there's vibration and there's dust and there's metal flakes and there's moisture, and all those things affect what you are doing, and you can't take account for these things because they're chaotic in their nature. Chaos and absurdity are pretty much the same things. Chaos, absurdity is just social chaos, is what it is. And then when you start looking at these events that and in feminist deconstructing fatherhood, when you do feminist all they're going to do is deconstruct and reconstruct it the way they want it to be, and they're never going to include you, and it's a third party, omnipotent party. When Deidre would say, well, you can't do that from a party outside because it's already off the field. A mother saying what a father is off the field. It's not the same thing. They weren't on the original field of or the table or the things, the parts of these things that that matter. And a lot of things doesn't matter when you're making decisions in your life. And this is not about fatherhood. This is not about them decisions, although these are important to Mgtow. And I hear a lot of people ask the question, a lot of young men, should I try to get children? Should I adopt a child? Should I take should I take a course on this? Should I look for someone as a surrogate? If I do want father, well, these are the questions you're simply going to ask yourself anyways. Or just put yourself out in the desert, mentally put a baby there or a child of 5 years old. And that's an important thing. Where do you want this child to be? At my age, I would say I have a good so many years, but I don't have that full amount of years to do these things. So if I did it right now, it would be a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old that goes straight to school and everything. And that's important. That would be important to me. But that's one of those emergent factors after the fact of the two things. So these are questions that you would simply deconstruct fatherhood. You're not going out and you're not gonna look at these things holistically in a sense of everything that's going on in my life right now and all the bullshit's all going to come slamming down at me, and I can't possibly do that because that's an excitable millennial child doing that. Logical people deconstruct these things. They reconstruct them. They say, can I do this? Most of the time, you're going to find out that after you do this, it's going to land right on the money of where you think. I'm not saying that life is perfect. Pragmaticism says that we don't know everything. But we take in all of our experiences and then we put them together and we just do the best job we can. We simply do the best job we can. And in this situation, there will not be no mother because we're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about being a father. So there will simply be no mother. Let me stop back at the James Gregory. Hello, James. Hello, Silent Sage. Hello, Swine Dog. I'm not garnering attention on Sunday morning that I used to, but it's okay. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to go through the Smithsonian guide here to fatherhood. We're going to say, well, that's bullshit, and this is stupid, and we're going to take a look at it, and then from this whole process, we're going to learn deconstructionalism anyways. We're going to learn reconstructionalism. We're going to learn what epiphenomena are. We're going to learn all those things, and then that's where this thing's going to go anyways, and I'll try to do it within under an hour. I know. So the first thing we look at is the Smithsonian Institute, what they say about deconstructing dad and the deconstructing dad product. What are the things that are important to most things? First thing he comes to the conclusion is this thing will have no mother in it. It's not important that a mother is there. And then he starts asking some questions. He says the upside down to the old man. What is the upside down to the old man? As an older man, there's reasons why you want to mate older. And one of the reasons you want to mate when you're older, of my age, or because there's telomeres and there's caps at the end of the chromosome that project it into they protect us from degeneration, and then those traits get handed down to your child. So an older man, and this is how it works: older men have children that live older. That's it. That's what happens. And with telomeres and stuff like that, older men have children, so that's something to consider. If you're a guy that's been through all the Mgtow, been in Mgtow for so many years, and you're looking at one good reason to have a child as older, that would be a telomere. That would be you're going to probably have a child that lives longer. You're going to be giving them longevity. You're going to be giving them a better lifestyle. But one of the things that are is dads will have to make sacrifices for their kids. I'm not a sacrifice kid. I think this is an errant statement. I'm like I said, I never wanted to be a father. I don't want to be a father. I can be certain things. I can be helpful. I can be a volunteer day dad. I can do those things, but I never wanted to do that. That's one of the things. What are the things? Sacrifice is one of the things that is one of those things they put back on the table as as an antecedent thing, but it's not really. It's off the field. You don't have to sacrifice for nobody. You don't have to sacrifice for nothing in this world, and that is sacrifice comes from the religious value of things. Now we're going to look at testosterone drop, and levels of testosterone drop. And this is where they get things all wrong, because they're doing it from a very gynocentric point of view, and they're doing it with the preconception that they didn't remove the mother. And for the Smithsonian to make this mistake, it blows my mind that the Smithsonian made this mistake. They say testosterone levels drop considerably after you father the child. No, they don't. Testosterone is raised from physical activity with the child and happiness. If you decided that, and you decide that you're happy, happiness, no stress, activity with the child will raise testosterone. Testosterone only drops when epigenetically your skin gets in contact with a female that is an estrogen producing machine. That is confused with the area of fatherhood, which they did not remove mother from that. And then you put mother long period effects with a female, your estrogen will rise and your testosterone will drop. It has nothing to do with fatherhood, and it has nothing to do with a lot of things. It just simply, having a child is not going to reduce your testosterone magically. There's no magic thinking in these things. There's reasons why fathers or married people, which they didn't remove the mother from the equation when they were deconstructing this thing, when they didn't remove the mother, and they didn't remove the mother laying estrogen and doing there's makeup products, there's her touch, there's her skin. That thing down there is an estrogen producing machine, and you will get it in you. So the second one was just, it was just total garbage to me that people in the Smithsonian, we're talking about professors, and we're talking about doctors, and we're talking about biologists and people like that, didn't see that logic. And number 3 for them would be, looks like the dad is going to be in good health. That's what I say. The dad, and this is true, having kids is probably the healthiest thing around that you can do. You're not going to lay around drinking beer on the couch. You're going to get out. You're going to play baseball the same they did. You're going to be often guiding them. It's going to be a rigorous process, which is going to lead to better health for you. You reduce fat, testosterone grows, and that's it. Number 4 on this: how how are you going to return a favor? Now, I don't know how this plays in to what the question they were asking, and I'm just kind of winging these things. I didn't go over these things that they said prehand. I just decided to not talk about philosophy for an hour, and we'll talk about how people perceive philosophy and how people perceive this thing of fatherhood and how deconstructing a father is perceived by others. And I wanted to answer some questions on that, so I didn't read these. Apparently, number 4 is how do you return a favor? I don't know how they get their questions. Apparently, it's a healthy heart thing to do both ways. A study presided Lancet earlier that genetic variations of Y chromosome, their fathers, 50% of them develop heart disease when they those without it. So what they're saying is apparently that healthier heart thing does go both ways. Okay, they're saying it goes both. You can genetically, if you're the genetic donor of the father, then if you got heart disease, the kid's going to get heart disease. That's not really an answer, and that's probably their second mistake on here. That's true with everything, and that's why we do sexual diversity. So that's why a woman looks at the face of a man before. But in this thing, remember that there is no woman in this thing, and that child was just brought by a stork and dropped in the middle of the desert. A lot of these things would be untrue to the situation of whether you pick that child up or not. And one of the things I was asking is, I looked at if you have this thing, if this thing plays out and you're looking at you're the father, or you're the human, and you're looking at the other human. One of the things you have to ask yourself is what Immanuel Kant would do is, what is good? Does anybody know what good is? Good, and Immanuel Kant says that good is you take everything else. He deconstructs good too in this thing, and and then he reconstructs good. You take everything off the table, and good by itself for good is good, and that's the only thing there is good. We can't add our feelings. We can't add the feelings of a state that wants something. We can't add the feelings of a society that wants something from you as a male. When you're doing good, it's just by good itself that it's done, and that's it. In that argument that I placed in there earlier, if there was a child laying on the street and you had to pick it up, or the choice was to leave it or to pick it up, and I know a lot of people in other countries that don't have resources do these things daily. There's children in Mexico that live in dumps and stuff like that because people have made the decision not to take these children in or take care of these children. And there's boys, lots of boys in Mexico that just run the street after 12 years old that parents have decided made these decisions. In America, these decisions are made for us. In the form of family courts and in the form of force, forced fatherhood, forced motherhood. And with the newest abortion laws, we're talking about forced fatherhood and forced motherhood. Never exclude yourself from these decisions that were just made. You will be forced as a father. If she ain't going to get no rights, you ain't going to get no rights. You can't even bargain through rights with her on a same level, because if she ain't, you ain't, and if you ain't, she ain't. And that's what I tried to. These things go back and forth. I was trying to impress on Jessica Valenti this week that the only way for this thing to become the only way to fight this thing or make this thing, well, you have to give fathers rights too, the right to abort, and then I think you would have the whole manosphere and all of them go, okay, great. If we can work together on this thing and we get the right to abort, we get the same choice that you do. And I'll go back to my thing. People that don't want to be mothers and fathers make bad mothers and fathers. You can't force that on them, but force is in America. And let me come back to, let me do this third. Okay, the testosterone thing. they're taking in all these antecedents like tobacco smoking, alcohol drinking, stuff like that. So they're leaving a narrative to the father. And I noticed that in most things that you read, you have to deconstruct all of it, and that's what Daedra's deconstruction would come in. On the question 5, they say, "What about drinking? What about smoking? What about male, male stuff and being a male and everything?" That's all somebody else's narrative that really isn't true. Now, that's what I would say with the Deconstruction Father Project. They break these things down and then they make it in their own narrative, and that narrative often matches the narrative of society, and the narrative of society is to shame and embarrass men so that force doesn't have to be applied, that you volunteer for your slavery. And that's where that goes. These people are very cunning in what they do. They're very manipulative in what they do. So a lot of these things, when you're reading these things as a Mgtow, you're taking a lot of stuff off the table. I'm thinking, I'm not buying into that. So they do this as mice of men thing, and it's more anxious mice make lousy fathers. Now 6, they see this. They see what I was talking about, and fathers that don't want to be fathers make lousy fathers. Mice that don't want to be fathers, they did the study. Anxious mice don't want to be fathers. If you're forced to be a father, that would cause anxiety in your life. It would cause stress in your life, and you're going to make a horrible father. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy by our government forcing men to be fathers when they know that forcing men to be fathers will make horrible fathers. And then they get to say, "Oh, look, we got all these horrible fathers out there." Well, no, we have a lot of fathers that never had the choice of being a father or not. Let me come back to the page here and see who's in. Taryn Marine. Hello, Taryn Marine. Hello, Orange Partisan. Hello, Swine Dog again. Hello, James Craig. Hello, everybody. Yeah, today we're talking about the Deconstruction Father Project. We're talking about how these things work. We're talking about how, and basically for me and for you guys, it's a little look into deconstructionalism. It's a little look into reductionalism. It's a little look so we know how these processes work, and we don't get caught up in skepticism where skepticism is just deconstructing everything and taking a big hammer or a shillelagh and smashing the crap out of everything, and that's it. No, at a certain point, you're going to have to reconstruct everything in your life. And that's what Mgtow does. You deconstruct everything, and then you have to reconstruct it after that, because that's life, because that's how these things, and most people they'll never look at the reconstructionalism of things. They don't want to. These are things where pragmaticism starts taking hold. What are my life experiences? What are the events that are going to happen? What are the epiphenomena on these things? What are the antecedents on these things? And writing, if I was writing it down, it would be the difference between writing, which Daedra does, and more of a basic existentialism like Kierkegaard or Descartes or Nietzsche does. How do I do it? And pragmatism is pragmatism. That's the end result of all these things. I do what I can. I know what I can, but I don't know everything. So I'll take a pretty good shot at this thing. So that's what we're learning today. But in this thing, we have social narratives. We have, you're going to go online, and the first thing you're going to see in deconstructionalism is you're going to see Daedra, and that's for scholars in school that deconstruct books, and that's a text deconstructionalism. He will explain some things about science, but I never liked Daedra. I think he says the obvious about everything. He's Mr. Obvious, and that doesn't work for me. So in that, you got Google pushing Daedra, and Google, and that's it. That's all they know. And if you go and you type it into YouTube, there's very little information about the total process that you will have to go through. And that's where I come in. I'm going to explain simply the total process of it. We take subjects that are interesting to us. Fatherhood. I'm going to deconstruct fatherhood. I'm going to take mother out of the equation. What is the father? I'm going to put two people, two humans, without labels, without names on the table, and we're going to start doing the emergent factors in that. That's the only way you can do it. And these factors will be the sum of your experience, the sum of your knowledge. It will be the things that are important to you. You do things that I don't do. Your life is still very different. There will be different emergent factors for each one of us. And that's why it's important that we do these things and we think this way as Mgtows, because everything will be individual at that point. Individuality is a natural process of Mgtow. It is not the process of which you search for. It's a natural process by doing these things that Mgtows do. We go galt. What is going galt? Galt is deconstructing your world. Jamaican coffee. I would add Jamaican coffee to my list of things in this world that I need. I know this is a difficult subject. Everybody I know that comes upon deconstructionism, they look at it and then they often do the skepticism thing where they think it's all about just breaking things down to the essence of it, or and that's not it. It's not why we do these things. We do these things sociologically, so we can get some meaning and some facts into our lives and how things really work individually for our individual lives. And it's one of the questions in Mgtow: do I want to be a father? And I would say, first of all, take that word father off the table. It's just a label that has been placed on you to make you pay E. And it's one of those manipulating epiphenomenon that are going to change what you do. So you're not a father. None of us are fathers. We're just a human being that's been tasked by choice or not by choice to take care of another human being which needs a process of growing. That's all that is. And it should be your choice, your body, your choice. All them things are fine and that stuff, but it still is your choice. The government will argue with us about this, but they are wrong, because their factors are by force, because this is the way they want it, because it works out better for society if you have a lot of slaves. 20 to 30% of every modern society are slaves. They're unwilling to share that information with you because they don't want that information known. Or they want to reject it. They want to do this thing like, no, 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 like children. No, 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 I can't hear that. I can't hear that. They're like children. And when you say these things to them, they will reject it, and they will go, oh, well, you're just crazy, or you're no, 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 no. Well, Mgtows are very bright, very intelligent people that they do the thinking on these things. They do the logical truth tables on these things. This is true, this is not true. And that's what you have to do in this thing. If you ever decide to be a father, you're going to have to put this is true, this is not true. And all the other garbage that I read, I'm going to deconstruct all that garbage on the internet, because most of it, 99% of it, is garbage. So, hello, Shingles. Hello, Orange Partisan. Hello, everybody there. Hello, Victor. So what do we got here? We got two humans. We got cost, which is not really the cost which we thought it was going to be, or this bland cost that the government says. We don't have a mother in this thing. There's no estrogen in our. In a Mgtow's world, there will be no estrogen affecting you. You're not going to lose your testosterone. A matter of fact, your testosterone will rise because of the activity levels that you will happily be in performed if you chose. if you chose on this thing. And that's the big thing. If you did not chose and you're a stressed father that is a forced father, of course your testosterone is going to go down. Of course you're going to look for help in validation from a female, because, and that's why I think a lot of guys in Mgtow, these purple pillars, don't understand that what they did is they looked for help in their life from a female. They validate themselves through a female. And a Mgtow's not going to do that. Mgtow says, hey, I'm independent. I find my independence, my agency in my thought. I find it in my philosophy. I find that I do these things very well. I transfer from one situation to another because these men do that naturally, says Winninger. Otto Winninger, you can read Sex and Sexuality. He'll tell you what men are and what men do. And I do these things as a man, and I don't need, and Winninger never had a woman either. He never considered that important in life, and that's what we have to do as Mgtows. We don't consider those things important, because I can see that's their responsibility. Their responsibility is to take agency for themselves. 100% is their body, their choice. Personally, after I deconstructed this thing, one of the first things I noticed was I can't have a baby, and that's a truth. And that makes a lot of things different. So if I can't have a baby, it's simply a voluntary process from there. Now, the government says it's a forceful, that will force that process on you, but you know my answer to that again. You know my answer is forced fathers don't make good fathers. You're ruining these kids' lives by doing that. It must be simply either you don't know that, which makes you ignorant, and you can claim ignorance, but that's not an excuse, or you're doing it purposely for monetary value. And then in that purposeful thing, you're making people slaves. Now men will rebel. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing in the natural process and natural order of humanality and biology in this world that we live in, we're seeing men rebel against the force of slavery. And they don't understand that. No one's ever explained it to them. Why is it? Well, I can go deconstruct that from too. I can put everything back on the table and tell them what I just told all of you guys. Forced fathers don't make good fathers, and forcing a father to do that, even forced mothers. If she wants to abort, let her abort. That's fine. You guys do know where babies come from. It comes from that split V, and it comes from her agent, her act of opening the legs, and there's nothing you did in there. You didn't make her pregnant. She made herself pregnant by her decisions in life. That's what I often hear this argument as a union steward. When I was a union steward at the oil production factory, when someone was going to get fired, we'd look at all the things, all the decisions they made in their lives, and they would argue like, why are you guys doing this to me? And I would simply tell them as a union steward, I did not do that to you. You did that to yourself. Take agency, take responsibility for your actions. You didn't show up 3 days in a row. You just decided to come in late. I know there's life emergent factors and that stuff, but you have to be responsible. You did it to yourself. Your boss didn't fire you. You fired yourself. It's the same thing we get with women. They're irresponsible. They want to show up late. They don't want the responsibility of having the job, and then they blame it on the person that fires them. The Mgtow, we fired them. They blame it on Mgtows because we fired them because they constantly showed up late. They were constantly screwing around on us. The job wasn't getting done, and then they blamed it on us instead of taking the responsibility. They fired themselves. When we talk about Mgtow, always remember that women fired themselves. We didn't do that. And you can relate to a boss employee situation where the employee just shows up late every day and you eventually have to fire him. And then every guy that I've ever known, that I've ever seen get fired, and I didn't fire him. I was just the observer, the union steward, to make sure all the boxes were checked and all the rules were were adhered to. And then I would sit back with it, hear it every single time. Why did you fire me? And I'd say, I didn't fire you. You fired yourself. I told you to show up on time. I told you how to do these things. There's simple rules to these things. But women are that way too. There's simple rules to the world. Her baby, her choice, her things. She opens those legs up. She will get pregnant. It's not your fault. She's simply avoiding responsibility. She's simply avoiding agency for those things. And that's all it is with that. And but that's so hard to explain to them too. You can't hardly have that conversation without emotions coming to it. Emotions, and we got liberal emotions there, and it's like, ooh, that's what I want to see. Liberal emotions. Wow, I don't do emotions. I don't do those things. I do a couple of emotions. I do happiness as a Mgtow. I do how to get to happiness. I do shock from absurdity of the things I see, and that's about it. And sometimes I do anger. But the more you delve into Mgtow, the more you find out.
Deploy in the unified workspace.
Oh, that's great. I got some kind of thing happening there. Sorry about that. In the background, a unified workplace. Yes. So we look into this thing of deconstructing fatherhood, and we look at the we look at how the Fatherhood Project does it. And I think they do it wrong. And I think Mgtow should look at these things and go to those web pages and go, listen, guys, you did it absolutely terribly wrong. And then you reconstructed it in your delusional view of the universe, the way things don't work. You never added any scientific facts to these things. And when you did add a scientific fact, it was lightly glazed over in question 6 or something like that, which gave about a paragraph, which really kind of tells with me when they do start thinking like me, and they say no, there's no such thing as a father. They know there's no such thing. It's just a social, it's a social construct that of the matrix to assist the matrix itself, which is Mgtow, which is the womb. So we looked at those things, and we get a pretty good view of how to deconstruct, how to reconstruct, and it's very, very easy. You can do that textually, literally, analytically, scientifically. We can do it methodologically, and it's easy. And it's easy if we just keep it easy. Once we go too far off on emergent facts and these things, it gets very difficult at that point. And I see a lot of the skeptics doing that. But what about this? But what about this? But what about this? And yeah, that's going to happen. But it's not going to happen. And like I said, emergent facts have nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the two solids or the solids that you added to that. Emergent facts are just emergent facts, and those things happen. It's just chaos. It has nothing to do with the original question. The common narrative that anger is a bad thing is BS. Yeah, we talked about that once. The common narrative that anger is a bad thing. You are angry for a while, for a reason. And most of the time, the reason is because it violated terms of service, honor. And women do, they violate these terms of service, and they come out with these absurdity things. The absurdity of not taking responsibility, the absurdity of throwing all these things, the absurdity of the courts, the absurdity of that. Yeah, you're going to get angry as a male, and hence you become the Mgtow, you become the rebel. And when I was looking at Helen Smith's we're going on strike, we're not really going on strike, and it's more like we Mgtows in itself. We fired you. Women, we fired you. Why did we fire you? Because going on strike doesn't give you the answers. We're not men on strike. We fired them. Why? And that's my question of by cause. There had to be cause in this. Going on strike would say, They, oh, we're just going on strike for a reason, to get something. We're not going on strike to get something. We're fired them by cause. So you can see how nature of these things. You can see how, and I do think Helen Smith was an agent, and in her book, Going on Strike, was an agent of the government to glaze over and make things seem like they weren't. No, we're not going on strike as men. We fired them, and we fired them for reason, by cause of what they were doing. And that's it. We took agency. That's what men do. We fire people. And we fired women. Yeah, in her body, women. I'll say, women do not belong to men. They have their own agency, and men don't belong to women either. When you do these things, you have to do them. You have to do them fairly. And if you want that equality in law, and not have the barriers that exist, you have to do these things. If women have the right to abort, men would have the right to abort. Fathers that don't want to be fathers make bad fathers. But I seen a question with the 25 justices in Alabama. They said 25 men made a decision. I agree that 25 men should never make a decision on a woman's body. But I also agree that women should not make a decision on a man's body too. And we don't become their slaves. We have, if we're going to have these choices, men, like I said, a mother that's forced to be a mother makes a bad mother. A father that's forced to be a father makes a bad father. But other instances of what can we force him to do? We can force him into slavery, and we can force him to pay for that stuff. But it's still forced fatherhood. It's still slavery. And they'll say, well, that's good for society. He's going to pay for something. But he never made that decision. Most people just, we don't have the right to abort. I've never even had anybody even ask me do you want to abort that child financially? Well, why don't I have that right to abort? Because it becomes manipulation, because a better part of what society deemed as good, but they're not taking everything as Immanuel Kant would say. They're not taking everything off the table and saying what is good. Good stands on itself. Good cannot be forced by a society onto a male for someone else. That is bad. That is the exact opposite of what good is. Now we have some emergent technology that's going to come into play pretty soon, and I think that's what's scaring the whole society now. We're in this new stuff that's coming up with the 15 states that don't have the. I think they're just doing deconstruction right now, because there's emerging technologies, and there's Mgtow, and there's the way men think about this, and we have to deconstruct it so we can put things back on the table. And one of the things that need to be put back on the table is men's rights. How are they going to get? How are you going to get abortion back? Well, you're going to get abortion back by including men in the abortion decisions. And that is the good for all. It's simply good for everybody. So it's good for the whole thing. Canada has these laws. If it's good for everybody in society, then you have a good and honest, fair policies. But right now we don't have good and honest, fair policies. So it's something I would never support. Now, my non-support doesn't mean that I don't agree with it. It doesn't mean that I'm a Christian, blah blah, a pro rights person or anti rights person. It simply means that I made the decision that it does not affect me in any way, and unless you put something for me on the table, then I'm walking away. I'm firing you still. I'm fired you. Well, how could it make any difference to me? An infant is a distinct human, separate person. Yes, yes. Children have rights too. Babies have rights too. And that's where Moses laws come in. If you feel you're a bad parent, and this is where men are excluded from the laws too. And Moses, right? If you feel you're a bad parent, any mother can drop the baby off or not accept the baby from the hospital, and then it goes into foster care, and they're relieved in most states. And I think 50 states have Moses laws where Moses was drifted down that was a form of abortion because what the king was saying, all male childs will die, and it's a form of absurdity, and it's a form of Camus's absurdity. All male childs will be executed at birth, so you would have that choice to float it down the river, and if someone picked it up that were on the other side of town that could afford those things, but slave childs, he was simply being honest about it and saying slaves can't afford children, so don't have a child. And that comes into what we think about too. We look at the master saying, slaves can't have children, and it's one of the decisions we have to make in our lives. If it does cost this amount, if there will be schooling, if there's cost involved in this, slaves can't have children. And if you're a slave as a father, if you're a forced slave as a father, how can you have a child? Because you can't afford that child. Orange Partisan, suppose rights were equal, what happens with differences of opinion in the case of abortion? Differences, what would be on the table at that point with differences of opinion? I would think in giving men equal rights of abortion, that takes care of a lot of the. I think that the far left and the Christians lose their solubility. Then they lose a lot of the thing because that's what men want anyways. The difference of opinion would come in as, is fatherhood voluntary? And that's the next question would ask. And then there's always the cuck question with the men. But there's a lot of men out there that want the voluntary fatherhood, the cucking on the voluntary fatherhood, even though that child isn't, they'll do it for the split V. It becomes very advantageous. Is you as the alpha, and that's what we have to think about, us as the alpha. You make a decision, and that's it. And then she can go get a cuck beta for that stuff. Suppose rights were equal, what happens with differences of opinion? I don't think differences of opinion and what fatherhood is. You're going to have to clarify that. What females think fatherhood is, support and support and protection. I think we take support. So the difference of opinion. So in difference of opinion, abort. Yeah, it's a religious where you think the child becomes a human. Do you think? And I'm not the male opinion. I don't really. I can't have a baby. I don't know when the baby comes up. All I know is we have abortion rights, and I don't have them. I'm not making a decision on whether the child becomes a baby at a certain point or child becomes human or when a child. Nobody's asking me my opinion on that anyways, except for 25 justices in Alabama and in these states. I don't have that right to make that opinion. Hence the right to take away fatherhood and give fatherhood as deemed by force or not force or who's going to choose the winners or losers of this thing, and that's the right to be a father, the right to be a father. I didn't have that choice. So I would say, in my opinion, what I want is a choice rather than a non-choice, someone forcing me. And in the Mgtow's opinion, I don't want to be forced to do anything. So I support the right to abort as long as I get the right to abort. And I know that's a 3-tier thing. But that's logical if all things be equal. But that's what they're not asking. They're saying you will be forced as a slave then. And that can't be, because that's irrational. That's absurdity. What do I think about I'm not going to go down that line. Sorry, Emily. It's just maybe another day I'll do domestic abuse, and then I'll do from a fair and honest point of view. We in Mgtow, we look at that domestic abuse as what is domestic abuse of a male. Domestic abuse of a male is going home, getting yelled at. It's that emotional abuse. It's that 24-hour, 24/7 thing that you're the responsible male and you're a simp. You got a small penis. Blah 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 blah. The abuse that we take generally over the time leads to the violence, and I think abuse gets abuse. You can't relieve yourself from that 50-50 thing where you give abuse too. As females aren't angelic beings. There's reasons why things happen in order, and that's where I'll leave that. I'll leave that there, because I don't want to get into a whole 2-hour segment of breaking down the terminology of that. It is an interesting thing, and I'm sure they thought through it, and I'm sure that they in that instance, they've recognized that fathers were getting abused, and to stop that abuse, force would be needed. But that's what we do in America too. We force fathers, but women are giving abuse after. It's sort of reverse Sharia law. We talk about reverse Sharia law, which the religious people are forcing fatherhood on men. And then it becomes an abusive situation to men. So these things go both ways. And I think it's important as a philosopher, if you're coming to my channel and you want to learn about philosophy, to you put all things on the table. We're not gonna discriminate and say we're gonna keep these biases, these gynocentric biases to women and pretend like they don't exist. It's like they do that all the time, and they do that all the time in the state houses. They do that. They pretend that it doesn't exist in the state houses. 98% of them are married, and they pretend there's not a initial bias towards single people of their group towards single people, when single people are not represented in Congress. There's not 46% of them like in the population. So these laws that are made are generally biased by the religious beliefs of marriage. And with those religious beliefs of marriage comes responsibility, and you're a protector provider as a male, which is assumed. And with that, it's forced, and I don't have a choice on that. And we're talking about choice. That all rolls down to choice of can I financially abort? That would be my choice. Can I say I'm a voluntary father and I'll give what I can and I can do what I can, but that's voluntary. That's where it should be. When Health and Human Services identifies a father, they said, voluntarily, what can you do? Do you want to help? And I think that would make for better fathers, because like I said, forced fathers don't make good fathers. We've seen an example of that with the woman and the child that disappeared in Oregon this week. Forced fathers don't make good fathers. Now, in all the comments that I read, what identifying factor in all these people, what they were talking about, was he a good father or was he a bad father? And I simply said, well, forced fathers don't make good fathers. Why would you expect him to be a good father? Because he was forced. He was a slave. And that makes total sense. But they see it with the abortion rights. They say forced mothers don't make good mothers. Well, why doesn't that apply to men too? That's gynocentrism in action. Why doesn't it apply to men? We don't have a real equality here. We have a party that has agency and a party that is assumed doesn't have agency. tea and kraut. No, that's a little bizarrism there. Tea and kraut. That's a lot of drama, and that's a lot of garbage. That's a lot of garbage there. So today we're talking about deconstructing fatherhood, and we've decided that I don't know it can go both ways. The way you decide is personal to yourself. What you're adding to the table, what you're taking off the table, what's important to you, your decision. And choice is important. And I think that's where this conversation rolled down to. Choice is so important for a male. Whether I want to be a voluntary father, that's important to me. That would motivate me to do that. Now, in this strike that Mgtows have, in this firing of women that Mgtow have, if choice was had and men did have choice, wouldn't that, and then in sub parentheses, it says men have the right to volunteer for that fatherhood position, and they can give and they can be altruistic, but with that, they have the choice to abstain from that too. And then I think that in itself would solve a lot of these problems. You get a whole different society that rolls out from that. You get men that want to be fathers and will do an excellent job at that, or do the best job they can do within the confines of their social economic positions, or positions, how smart they are, what they have to offer, and everything. And a lot of people will start asking the cuck questions on that. What is a cuck? What is a and it's that becomes not important at that point, because you've already had your right to choose has been. You don't have to be a cuck if you don't want to be. If you want to be a voluntary cuck, and a lot of those men, a lot of those purple pillars over there, they're really stupid guys, and that's the only argument I'd have. We're putting men in charge of our children. I mean, it could be good. We'll do the deconstruction on it. It could be bad, and it could be good. We're putting men with low IQs in charge of raising our children. But with that, they have the same IQ as the children, so they'll make great partners for the children to play with. I know, I just pissed off Charles again. So we do the logical thinking on these things. Cuckery looks indignant. Yeah, cuckery looks like indignant. Yeah, there's one of the things in Mgtow that we don't forgive. We can forgive a lot of things from a lot of males, like I say, and I didn't do my go your own way, man. All your sins from the past are forgiven. Go your own way. One of the things that is like a mortal sin in Mgtow, one of those big sins, is cuckery. If you volunteer for cuckery, you can't be a Mgtow and then be an independent person if you're volunteering for the slavery position and the cuckery. So that excludes you from being a Mgtow. Now, what I'm talking about is the difference is a choice of fatherhood. Okay, that baby was born. It has my genetic material in her. I have a choice of fatherhood, or I have a choice to do what's natural in society for the beta to raise the child. He can come get that split V. I don't really care about that split V. I'll move on. I'll get over this. I'm going to move on. And but there will be situations in that, like take everything off the table. Take everything off the table and say, I'm a human. That's a human baby. What are the things that I would do for that? Would I pick it up? Would I do this? It's just laying there on the ground. Would you pick it up? Of course you would, because that's the good. Without good is what's good for good. It doesn't have nothing to do but what is good. You would do that. Does that make you responsible? That's the question that men get at the hospital. Are you doing good for the sake of good? And because you did good for the sake of good, you're being forced by society to do that good forever? And that's where I would start asking questions as a philosopher. What gives them the right to force that on you forever at the hospital? In contractual form or whatever, however they do that, they label you as the father. Father's a made-up word that means payee or pater. And then are the questions I ask in these things. But what we don't forgive is voluntary cuckery from the beta, because, well, he is the beta. And he's the beta for reasons, not because he just magically came down as a beta. No, they're these purple pillars and these guys that are volunteering. They're betas for a reason, because they've accepted that they can't be a Mgtow because they've accepted that duty of beta. So okay, fine, but don't come purple pilling around here because you've decided to be a beta. So I think there's a lot of things we ask ourselves as men, and there's a lot of logic that's being violated here, and the world is absurd, and our governments are absurd. They don't think about these things in the right way. Let me see. The more someone goes on about cuck, the more likely they secretly want their girlfriend to be to get done by another man. Yeah. Well, we see that in cuckservatism too. I say there's two parties here. There's the cuckservatives and there's the liberals, the far right and the far left. The far right is pushing for cuckservatism, as we can see with guys like that preacher just got the Jimmy Farwell. Farwell was his name. I mean, he liked it. He wanted his wife to be cucked by the pool boy, and we can see that with Jeb Bush, which his wife was cucked. And I started thinking, well, what is that cuck thing? They're volunteering for slavery. They become the slave to what they. So of course, the natural response of those men on the far right would be, oh, they like that cuckery stuff because they're kind of weird on that. Now, the far left cuckery is that's very, very much different. And we got the lefties that think a certain way, and we got the righties that think we're the best way for a Mgtow to get into a good frame of mind on this stuff is to kind of center yourself in the middle and don't associate with those people either way. If they go off to the conservative side, yeah, I would just say no. You're cucking yourself in a different way and disguising it, and trying to disguise it under the guise of responsibility, and that's craziness. And that's craziness. I'm not going to volunteer for that. Um, So we covered a lot of stuff today. We covered a lot of thinking. And basically, what we did is we covered deconstructionalism today, and whatever topic you pick for deconstructionalism, you have to remember some facts about deconstructionalism. So the facts about deconstructionalism is you're going to do reconstructionalism. You're going to do reductionalism, and reductionalism is simply putting the facts on the table that are pertinent to the argument. In this argument, you got father, and you got what would be of a human male, a mature human male taking care of a less mature human female to the point where it gets mature. And then you start the questions after that. I start to question, like, if there was a baby laying on the ground, would you pick it up or would you walk by it? And that's where your question as fatherhood starts. You're going to have epiphenomenon. You're going to have antecedents in these things, which are things that are going to arrive later, and then chaos arrives. Chaos is something you have to take in account for. But chaos and antecedents, they can never affect the two things that exist. It's just kind of a proven law, and from the start, what we did with we did reductionism because of the parts of we did reductionism because of the parts. And basically what you're doing is you're taking something and you're looking at a new approach as it's taking shape. With reductionism, you're taking everything off the table and you're putting on a new approach and looking at the two things that matter, the things Kierkegaard would call them, things that are real, like you, the child. The mother doesn't matter in this thing. You and the child and the things that are real, what is good. And then you're taking in all the antecedent considerations, the chaos, the epiphenomenons of this thing, and the emergent phenomenons, which they don't impact the phenomenons, and then you're doing reductionism based on reconstructionalism. You're going to reconstruct the situation in your mind, And you're going to do this with everything in life. It's not just this topic that I picked today. It's building planes. It's writing a book. It's looking at scientific facts under a microscope. You're going to ask these questions with everything. So this becomes a very important topic with men. As soon as you get this process down in your mind, you start being a more rational, more pragmatic Mgtow. And that's all I was talking about today. And I hope you're all having a great day, and become that rational male. Become that thing. And I think we all started to take a look at whether we are on strike or whether we fired them. I don't think Helen Smith was actually right when she wrote Men on Strike. We're not striking because we don't want nothing from them. We're not going to validate through that. We fired them. We fired them for a reason, because they didn't show up for work, because they were doing a horrible job. And that's it. Like a boss would fire an employee, and you are the boss. In your world too, be the boss. You don't have to be a cuck. You don't have to be a beta male. You are the boss. You're the alpha male on this planet. You are the shit. You are the finest thing on this planet. You're the apex predator on this planet. So be that. Be the boss. Make those decisions. And that's what Mgtow does. We're just being the boss. Hell, everybody wants to be the boss. But I'm sorry about your genetic predisposition to this planet, how it genetically placed you on this planet. That's not my responsibility. Just make it to work. Whatever you're doing, make it to work. And otherwise, we're going to have to fire you. And that's what we're doing as Mgtows. We're making that choice to fire them. Not to strike. It's not like I'm coming back to the table after this. I know too much now. I'm not coming back to the table and re-entering the matrix as a slave. And until those things are fixed, and one of the things that would be fixed in that is voluntary fatherhood, which is right to financially abort. And that's where those things go to. And the whole thing works out to where these things go to my rights on this planet. I'll make a horrible father if I was forced to be a father. I'll make a horrible worker if I'm forced to be a worker, which is called a slave. And that's the logic I wanted to get to today, and why I think the way I think. And I get questions about when I say I'm not a father, and there's a lot of thinking behind that. And I didn't want to have, and I think most people do these syllogisms in their head naturally. People above that 85 IQ start doing these things. People like purple pillars, they're at that 87, 85. They don't do the rational syllogisms because they don't do them good, because they're overtaken by their little peanut brain on the top of their brainstem, and they're having problems with that. So, but most rational people do the syllogisms in our head, and we work these things out, and we see the absurdity and illogical formations of the way our society is structured. And we have to ask these questions, and most men will get to them questions, whether it be by pain, or whether it be by knowledge, or whether it be pragmaticism, or whether it be watching someone else, or being the observer, and that's where Mgtows, we just observe these things and we note the facts on these things. So that's all I wanted to talk about deconstruction, because it is, if you look on the internet for answers in that, you're going to get very few answers, and people aren't going to tell you that there's a lot of things that go together on that thing. And if the skeptics, you ask a skeptic, it's going to be basically deconstruction. We're going to take everything and we're going to criticize everything. We're going to do total nihilism, and then that's it. But they don't know how to reconstruct things in their lives. And that's why it's important. It's important for a Mgtow to know the total philosophy of these things. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. And it's important. And most of all, what's most important is Mgtows have a place. There's all of you guys. And you guys, each and every one of you guys, make up a part, a thing, a piece of that place. And then you get put into place. And then it becomes Mgtow. And most of all, thanks for being Mgtow. Mgtow.